Okay, so today's video will talk about homeostasis, what it is, negative feedback mechanisms, and positive feedback mechanisms. So first, let's talk about homeostasis. Homeostasis is well defined as a dynamic equilibrium. So it's basically this dynamic balance that the body creates where, let's talk about blood sugar. So it keeps your blood sugar within this normal range of normal, right? We say dynamic because it changes, it fluctuates, but it stays within the normal, and we do things to keep it within that normal, okay? So it's a dynamic state of equilibrium. Now, anything that causes you to go outside of that dynamic state of equilibrium creates a homeostatic imbalance, and this is where we see diseases and things like that crop up. So that's what homeostasis is. A lot of times we talk about, homeostasis being equilibrium or balance. Just remember, it's a range of balance. So it's dynamic in the sense that it's constantly moving, okay? What's a negative feedback mechanism? What's a positive feedback mechanism? A negative feedback mechanism works like this, and we see it in a lot of systems in the body, but I think it's really well illustrated with hormones. And what happens is, with a negative feedback system, let's use that blood sugar as an example. The blood sugar rises, so we release a hormone called insulin, and insulin is going to lower the blood sugar. So the blood sugar rises, we release insulin, it lowers the blood sugar. Once we get to the point where we're within that normal range, we stop producing insulin. Because if we would continue, then it would move past, and now we'd have low blood sugar. So that's called a negative feedback. Once we hit the normal range, right? Once we've achieved homeostasis, then we have a negative feedback loop that shuts off whatever that particular hormone, chemical, or cascade is. Okay? So we can think about it even like with an air conditioner. Okay? If you set the thermostat to 75, it's 80 degrees in the house, set the air conditioner to 75, the air kicks on. The air is going to kick on until the temperature drops down to 75. At 75, you've achieved homeostasis according to the thermostat because you set it for 75. There's going to be a negative feedback that shuts off the thermostat so that it doesn't keep going colder, colder, colder and create imbalance in the other direction. So that's a negative feedback mechanism. You can use heat going in the reverse direction as well. Now, what's a positive feedback mechanism? This is a little less understood or less processed by people because it's not used as much in the body. Now, a positive feedback system is something like when we break a blood vessel, what's going to happen is we're going to draw platelets to the area. Platelets are going to create this thing called a platelet plug. But what they will do is they will release chemicals, and those chemicals will cause other platelets to be drawn to the area that will stick to the collagen, and other platelets will release chemicals that draw other platelets, and so we get this more result. So a positive feedback mechanism is something that perpetuates and gets larger, right? The response gets larger, okay? And within that response, it makes it more until the job is accomplished. So once we've created that platelet plug and blocked the stoppage of bleeding, then we stop producing the chemicals from the platelets to draw the platelets to the area, right? So another great example is labor. And so oxytocin gets released, and then it stimulates these contractions, and the contractions cause more release of oxytocin. They stimulate more contractions. The contractions get more frequent, they get more intense until delivery happens, which is the end goal. And then at that point, oxytocin stops being produced. Now again, the contractions don't stop right away simply because there's still oxytocin in the bloodstream, and it takes time for the body to remove that completely from the bloodstream. But it stops producing it, so we go more. Task accomplished, stop producing, eventually less. And so those are some good examples of positive feedback mechanisms. Negative feedback, we do some type of effect or response, right? Secrete some type of chemical or hormone that causes a change. When we achieve that homeostatic range or that homeostasis, we shut it off through a negative feedback system. So it can be very tightly regulated or relatively tightly regulated. Positive feedback, we create a response that creates more response, until the task is done, and then it eventually gradually goes back down. Okay? So that's your positive feedback mechanism, your negative feedback mechanism, and homeostasis. If you have any questions, let me know. Stay strong. I'll see you next time.